Liar. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Tuesday, April 11th, 2023. That's the correct year, isn't it? Haven't we got that right? Okay, I believe that's the case. Nothing changed. No real reason why I shouldn't believe that, everybody. Okay, well, Tuesday, time for another show, and it being Tuesday, we're hoping to hear from Joan McCarter later in today's program. It's been a tough run. Well, I mean, the first part of it's been a tough run for us, but the first part of the run was fine because it was vacation, and that's cool. And then there was, okay, well, now I got a little tickle in my throat, not feeling up to doing a radio show. Could do a pantomime kind of a thing, but, well, I guess the actual mime kind of thing where it's silent, but no good for radio. So hopefully all is on the mend and everything is looking good for today. I did get a note that Greg, who's going to be ordinarily would be with us on Wednesday, has got a conflict of sorts. Nothing major, but not going to be able to make tomorrow's show. Also not going to be able to make yesterday's show, at least not again. But since we already recorded it, it's okay. But he can't do it twice. That's the real point. Especially not if we try to do that show tomorrow. Especially as that show. Well, okay, you get the idea. Like I said, nothing strange going on. I'm not caught in any temporal folds or anything like that, jumping between time periods. Don't worry about me. It's all going to be okay. All right, so let's see. This morning, as I was getting ready to get the show together. Well, first of all, I discovered a new function on Soundboard that allows you to play multiple sounds simultaneously, which I had previously thought was simply not possible, but it's actually just a switch you flip somewhere. But then I realized the reason why the default setting is for one sound only. Although it does mean you can do some great fun things like mixing up a whole bunch of sounds all at once, which is, clearly, fun.
Oh God, get the vaccine already, you That's bullshit.
Yeah, so you can see that you can do that. But ordinarily, we hadn't been able to do that. But then I realized that the reason that didn't work is it used to be that if one sound was playing and you clicked another one, the first sound would cut off immediately. And it would play only the second sound, which is great for transitioning into the show with the different little pieces of music that are supposed to come on at a certain time. And then with that mode off, which I thought was going to be fun and creative, and we would allow us to do all those stupid things that we just did, like, I don't know, playing. Not how this works! Right, all that kind of fun stuff of turning up all the different sounds at once. Not really nearly worth the trouble you can get into with the music in the morning. But then again, nobody actually cares about whether or not the music overlaps, and it's fine. Anyway, let's see. So this morning I saw Justice giving us the thumbs up and then giving us the usual hints about what nonsense was in the news these days. And I have seen, I think, snippets about both of these things, but now I feel like I should dive further into them. But the first one hints at, I did see something come across the transom the other day, which I think was maybe a Daily Kos, email about the top stories and what's been recommended lately, and come and see our latest story. And the headline jumped out: Trump hire causes civil war between MTG, which we understand to mean murderer traitor Green, and another white nationalist. And I confess I did not click through to see which white nationalist was murderer traitor fighting with now, because any white nationalist that she's fighting with would be a fine answer. But it looks like it might be, is it Laura Loomer? Is that what you're talking about here, Justice, who's texting me about the two of them? And I imagine that must be, how green is my Loomer? And so that was the question. I assume that was the the story behind it. Now I really feel compelled to go and find out. And we'll click through to the link. It's Walter Einenkel, who's written this front page Daily Coast post. And yeah, that's Laura Loomer, right? Very crazy looking and dark hair. Okay. It's funny, too. They look like, negative images of one another because here in this, the picture of Loomer with her dark hair in more or less the same style as Murdery Trader's is in blonde, and here's Murdery Trader in her weird white puffy suit, like her harp sealed disguise or whatever it was she was wearing to the State of the Union address. Very dark looking picture of Laura Loomer here, so they look like, I said, negative images of one another, or Spy versus Spy from the old Mad magazine, which I believe is in the news now because Al Jaffe died at like 100 and something years old too. I guess I just believed he had been dead for a long time. Maybe he did too. And that's the sort of thing he might have written about himself. But famous cartoonist from Mad magazine for many, many years. And you have to be of a certain age, I think, at this point to have any idea who he is. But back to Walter Einenkel writing about the Trump hire causing a civil war between Murdery Trader Green and another white nationalist. These guys are hot for civil war, and if they can't get one with the libs, I guess they'll have one between themselves. I'm now curious about finding out what this is all about. On Friday, the New York Times reported that Donald Trump's brain trust wants anti-Muslim bigot, failed former congressional candidate and all-around far-right troll, Laura Loomer, to join his presidential campaign. All right. The report highlights how Loomer has been in attendance at recent Mar-a-Lago functions, has met with the twice-impeached former president, and has the kind of bigoted, inflammatory style that Donald seems to respond to. The report is also careful to explain that while Trump has asked for this, Loomer has not yet been officially hired. Once again, he's having difficulty getting people to pull the trigger on his plans, I guess. Loomer told the Times that she wouldn't be responding to the report out of respect for President Trump. She did want to say more, though, because she's a big blabbermouth, and so then she went ahead and, I guess, said it. The president knows I have always been a Trump loyalist and that I'm committed to helping him win re-election in 2024. He likes me very much, and it's a shame that he's surrounded by some people that run to a publication that is notorious for attacking him. Yeah, sure. In order to try to cut me at the knees. I assume she meant off at the knees. Maybe she even said it. I don't know. Instead of being loyal to President Trump and respecting their confidentiality agreements. There, I guess, is President Trump's newest pronoun. And thanks to Laura for respecting that. Of course, not everyone is happy with this news. Specifically, Georgia bigot Representative Murdery Trader Green. That's interesting. I didn't realize they were at odds. Responding on Twitter, writing, Laura Loomer is mentally unstable. She is correct about that. And a documented liar. She's correct about that as well. I mean, it's also true about Murdery Trader Green, but I'm giving her credit for being right here. She cannot be trusted. That's about the best put together 2 sentences I've ever seen from Murdery Trader Green. They're, correct in syntax and structure and substance. That's really something. But let's see. What do you really think? What do you really think, Representative Green? Walter asks. Green is added about 500 more words to what you thought. I knew that couldn't be it because that was not only correct but succinct. Anyway, and then Laura Loomer responded, and then even more wretched MAGA right-wingers got into it. Grab some popcorn. Oh, I thought he was just going to be very clever and cut it off there. And can you believe it? This idiot responded with 500 more words, but we're not going to tell you what they were. Just understand that they were dumb. But all right, I guess we'll get a preview of what it was. Green finished her tweet with, "She spent months lying about me and attacking me just because I supported Kevin McCarthy for speaker." That's the genesis of it. "And after I had refused to endorse her last election cycle. She loves alleged FBI informant and confirmed weirdo Nick Fuentes." Oh boy. "She tried to get hired on the Ye campaign. How does he say, Ye or Ye? Kanye. Ye, so I guess, right? Ye campaign after the infamous Mar-a-Lago dinner. Interesting. She spells it here, all one word with no hyphens, just Mar-a-Lago. And it fooled me at first. But Kanye West refused to hire her, so now she's running to Trump. Never hire or do business with a liar, Green warns. Liars are toxic and poisonous to everything they touch. I'll make sure he knows. But okay. Anyway, that seems fun. Then Laura Loomer, who, like Green, had been allowed back onto Twitter by Elon Musk, despite being given a lifetime ban for misinformation and bigotry, retweeted Green's tweet with a video showing Murdery Trader Green praising Loomer in the good old racist days of yesteryear. Loomer, like Green, has an oversized and extra sensitive rage button, so that's going to be fun. And let's see. And then big MAGA liar and kinda lawyer Jenna Ellis responded to Green's tweet by writing, agreeing with Murdery Trader Green, adding a 100 here. That's how you can tell something. She has lied and or attacked and posted vulgarities about everyone she feels threatened by. And I think she's talking about Laura Loomer in this, but I'm not sure. It has been quite the day for hate-filled bigots vying for the ear of disgraced and indicted Donald Trump. As you may recall, Loomer has the distinction of being such an Islamophobe that she was banned from Twitter, Lyft, and Uber. She and Murdery Trader Green made up what was called the alt-right for a time, and then the far right, but what is generally the acute ethno-fascist wing of the Republican Party. A few months ago, Loomer and others attacked Green for being wishy-washy on her support of Donald Trump and all things MAGA when Murdery Trader Green threw her support behind empty vessel Kevin McCarthy for the speakership of the House. At the time, Loomer told Newsweek that MTG is a snake and she needs to go. That's true, too. That's why I call her Marjorie Trader Green, but you could up your game and call her Murdery Trader Green, although maybe that's a compliment. Anyway, hold the phone. The QAnon cultist who won the Delaware GOP primary for U.S. Senate, Lauren Witzke, has jumped in to attack Jenna Ellis. Attack Jenna Ellis, writing... the two of them look too, I guess when MAGA women look too much like one another, they tend to fight. Maybe that's what's going on here. I mean, that's awfully sexist, but they're awfully dumb. So, it could happen. I think they just fight generally. When there's power to be had. And when they're out of power, I guess they are all equally helpless. And so therefore tend to yell at other people instead. I don't know. Anyway, it's interesting, by the way, how many times Delaware nominates total lunatic women for the Senate. I'm just thinking back to, what's her name, Christine O'Donnell. And they have a long tradition of that, I guess. Long in the sense that they did it twice over the course of 10 years. Anyway, what did she do? Attacking Jenna Ellis. Writing, Jenna, you ran to the defense of the Disney pedophiles. Oh, that's another story. And are simply hard up, maybe? Or are simping. Okay, are simping hard. Their syntax is crazy. You are simping hard for an AG position in the DeSantis cabinet. He's got an AG. I think he sat there. Loomer was right to call you out for it. All right, sure. And then we all enjoyed the alt-right in disarray. Let's see. What do I have here? There's the Gadsden flag snake eating itself in a circle here. Oops, I treaded on myself. All right, pretty good. And, of course, the whole thing is illustrated with people digging up pictures of Murdery Trader Green taking pictures with Laura Loomer back in the day. And they've never looked more like mirror or negative images of one another than when standing side by side. Well, they're both horrific people, and I wish the worst to both of them, possibly in the same fiery accident at some point in the near future. Okay, it would be great to be rid of both of them, and no one can wait for that day to arrive. But I guess we'll just have to. Now, there was another thing that Justice tipped me to, which is another. I I think I missed this one, but I saw some mention of it yesterday. I don't even know if I want to figure this one out, but, he's also saying those who hate woke beer drink woke beer because they don't know it's woke or whatever. I think Bud Light, if I understand this correctly, maybe the whole show should just be me trying to unravel these little mysteries without actually reading the article. But I understand, I did see, who was writing about it? Was it maybe Philip Bump writing about it yesterday on social media? That Bud Light, I guess, is a sort of they're looking to, market to people who have money, which is a thing that the producers of mass market products often do. And one of the ways you do that is acknowledge the demographic you're interested in letting know that you see them and acknowledge them and would like them to give you their money, and you put them in a commercial. So, of course, these days, that's trans folks, trans everybody, and then I don't even know how to refer to everybody and not miss out on somebody else's different gender designation. But trans people, gender non-conforming people, I think that's the biggest, broadest, loosest definition that maybe captures everybody, but you never know. That's my best attempt at it for the moment, but the new language will develop and we'll pick up on that soon enough. But I guess they're putting them, featuring them, or even just glancing quickly at some of them in a commercial or something along. That's what I gather from all this. I'll see what I can find by way of actual stories about this thing, or maybe we just leave it at this point and Scott figures out what's going on. But at any rate, as I recall, I had seen Philip Bump commenting on it, probably on Mastodon, and saying, this is going to be really tough on the Republicans because, of course, they hate any acknowledgement of non-gender conforming people of any sort. That is to say, people of any sort and acknowledgement of any sort. But at the same time, how do conservatives cobble together a boycott of Bud Light? And, it's just, it's a particularly galling thing for them to do. But what was it? I'll see if I can find Bump's comment, although there's usually just no way to find anything like that on Mastodon because it's hard unless they used every word has a hashtag or hash sign to it so that you can search it that way. I don't know what exactly the designers of Mastodon had in mind when they did this, but they did. All right, so let's see if we can find it, because I thought he put it in a particularly interesting way, but now I'm not certain I'll be able to turn him up. But anyway, he had some other more substantive observations about, I don't know, any number of other issues that we should be discussing. I'll just have to go during the break and see if I can find this thing. But one of the stories that I put aside for yesterday and then didn't actually read through, was it him? Oh, no. Okay. Now I know why I was thinking, yeah, I didn't, it wasn't his, but rather, the other person with, I guess, probably just about as many syllables in their name. Will Bunch, not Philip Bump, but the other B, surname Bunch, Will. And I guess if we called him William Bunch, then it would make more sense to get confused about it. But, I happened to pick up his article because and it's a good way of getting around to reminding you of something completely different, which is that Tennessee, I guess, thankfully, has got some very odd laws, that, it's not that, well, it's not odd, but it's different from the federal rules when if a member of the House of Representatives, the federal House of Representatives, had been expelled by a vote of the body. In order to get them back in place in the body, they would have to be elected in a special election to replace themselves, which is a thing that can happen, but that takes usually at least several weeks, as the governor of the state has to set a date for the special election, and depending on how friendly that person is, they might try to delay or otherwise get in the way of returning this person to office. But in Tennessee, I guess they don't like to leave those seats vacant for very long, and there's a mechanism by which the local authorities in the district can be called upon to quickly appoint someone to that position so that you don't miss out on representation, which is a great idea because it's important to, to have someone in that seat and to be speaking for this constituency. And so, guess what? As it turns out, the people who had just recently been elected to these seats are extraordinarily popular, politically speaking, in those districts. And it's weird the way that matches up, right? And so, not only had they very recently won election in those districts anyway, but the local authorities were, like most of us, incensed at the idea that the Republican legislature would vote on a party line basis to eject these two members, these two young black men who, dared to protest in support of gun control measures, or at least the call for gun control measures anyway. It wasn't even anything that solid at that point. So the local authorities very quickly moved to return them as appointments to fill the unfinished terms they had been expelled from. So they're right back where they were, which is interesting. I guess it puts the ball in the Republicans' court. I suppose they could continue to try expelling them every week, but I don't know. I think they'll probably at this point give up and just live with it, but you never know. It was an awfully dumb thing for them to do in the first place. And that being the case, they might remain dumb and decide to do something even dumber. Now, of course, these guys have national prominence, and everyone will be looking for them to move up the ladder over the years. That might happen real soon. They may find themselves, looking at running for the state Senate or running for Congress from these districts as well. Although Tennessee has made it awfully hard for anyone who identifies as a Democrat, much less African-American Democrats, to run for office by gerrymandering the congressional districts as aggressively as they have. But these guys, one or both of them, are fully capable of fighting that fight anyway and saying, look what's happening here. Anyway, Will Bunch, in reporting on the story of their expulsion from the Tennessee House, has put together a widely read and widely shared article that perhaps we'll share in the next few minutes before our first break. GOP, as others call it, wages an asymmetrical war on democracy because it can't get the votes. And this is, I think, Will's compilation of all the various anti-democratic actions that the Republicans have been taking in various states and on the federal level that we've been talking about, and putting it all together in one place, which is always helpful. The expulsion of two black Tennessee lawmakers capped a dangerous week when Democrats won elections and the GOP waged war on democracy. And we're at loggerheads on that, aren't we? We're winning democracy. They're destroying democracy. They're probably destroying democracy precisely because we're winning at that democracy. And if they're going to lose, they're going to wreck it. Well, it was the highlight reel of what should have been a banner week for American democracy. Scores of down vest-wearing, smartphone-gazing students at the University of Wisconsin at Eau Claire, if I am pronouncing it correctly, in a line that snaked around every corner of a campus building as they waited to cast a ballot for an open seat on the Wisconsin Supreme Court. When the votes were tallied at the end of the night, some 883 people had cast ballots at the campus polling place, more than any other precinct in Eau Claire, and nearly 6 times as many as voted there in a similar election 4 years earlier. And 87% of the students had voted for Democrat Janet Protasewicz. Perhaps a rejection of her Republican opponent Dan Kelly's lifelong opposition to abortion and his work trying to overturn Joe Biden's 2020 election victory. The surge in young voter turnout was a key reason why Protasewicz won a landslide, 11-point victory, of course, in a key swing state that Biden had only just won by over 20,000 votes 3 years earlier. Overall, the turnout for a race to decide the balance of power on the Badger State's highest court set a record for a non-presidential year. But the GOP's Kelly wasn't hearing the chimes of freedom. He all but called the Democrats' victory illegitimate. And then you remember that he was refusing to concede because he didn't have a quote-unquote worthy opponent in his view. That's what he told his supporters on election night. But I do not have a worthy opponent to which I can concede, he said. I would love to concede to a worthy opponent, but I can't because she's not worthy. He claimed without evidence that Protasewicz is a serial liar and that the Democrat who defeated him doesn't believe in the rule of law, but the rule of Janet. It would be easy to dismiss Kelly's election denial as unusually sour grapes, except that some lawmakers in the GOP majority in the Wisconsin legislature are, and this is hard to believe, already talking about impeaching Protasewicz even before she takes the oath of office. A new state senator who won a special election to give Republicans a supermajority in Madison said he'd seriously consider impeaching the new justice, citing the flimsy pretext of her record as a circuit judge in quote-unquote, failing Milwaukee. Now, we heard indications that the Republican leadership in the state Senate there is not actually interested in moving forward. But, what this means, of course, is that Republicans are in disarray. So, we can celebrate that and acknowledge it. Should have been a banner week for democracy, he then concludes, but it wasn't. Now, that's just the conclusion of the first part of this compilation article. We'll return after 2 minutes and hop into the rest just to see what else he reminds us of. Hi everybody, it's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and patreon.com patreon.com is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We continue with the not Philip Bump, but Will Bunch article. Like I said, much discussed online the other day when it came out, and he had just wrapped up his discussion of the expulsion of the Tennessee lawmakers and the Wisconsin. Or I think we actually did. We discuss the? We certainly discussed the expulsion, but also the triumph in the Wisconsin Supreme Court election, but then the immediate threat of impeachment. Anyone doubting Republicans' impeachment bluster in Wisconsin could take a look around to Nashville, Tennessee. That's the relationship between the two of them, where white GOP lawmakers stunned the nation by expelling two black colleagues and disenfranchising their roughly 140,000 predominantly African-American constituents because the men had, from the floor of the Capitol, joined 1,000 or so young people protesting gun violence. And he notes parenthetically that a white female Democrat who also protested kept her seat, by one vote. The Tennessee expulsions, tinged with the racism that echoed from the 1960s civil rights protests with deep roots in Nashville's once segregated lunch counters, showed America just how far Republicans are willing to go to hold power by nullifying the votes of black and brown voters and drowning out the voices of young people who thoroughly reject Republican dogma around AR-15 assault rifles, transgender athletes, or banning abortion. Now, luckily, we found out that Tennessee handed itself the remedy by allowing the local authorities to send those ejected lawmakers straight back. And that's good news. That movement has in 2023 already brought a flurry of moves, including state takeovers of Democratic school boards in large red state cities like Houston, and legislation in states from Georgia to Missouri aiming to sharply curtail power and potentially remove progressive district attorneys elected by urban voters, such as the impeachment of Philadelphia's twice-elected prosecutor Larry Krasner. Even Congress got in on the act with legislation to nullify a sweeping criminal justice overhaul that Washington, D.C.'s majority black city council had approved 12-1. What's more, this political counter-revolution in legislative corridors is taking place right as the conservative movement's grand project of the last half-century, a ruthless, multi-million-dollar crusade to install unaccountable, lifetime right-wing judges across the federal bench, is coming to full fruition. Good Friday's decision by Amarillo, Texas-based federal judge Matthew Kacsmaryk, a Donald Trump appointee rooted in ultra-conservative networks, seeking to undo approval of the abortion drug, oh boy, and I'll never get this, it's just mifepristone? Is mifepristone? I still don't know. Nobody knows. And, I don't know. Well, maybe we can try again with Joan. Maybe she practiced it, or maybe she just stopped trying to say it. Anyway, undo the approval of this abortion drug after 23 years on the market, by the way, is a huge end run around democracy in a nation where a majority of voters support abortion rights. Conservatives routinely filed lawsuits in Amarillo because Kacsmaryk is the district's lone judge. We've been over that subject many times. Now his ruling, another huge blow to reproductive rights in a nation still reeling from the Supreme Court's overturn of Roe v. Wade, clearing the way for red state abortion bans, heads to that same high court, which is reeking from the stench of billionaire corruption. Last week's blockbuster report from ProPublica that Justice Clarence Thomas has accepted and not reported hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of luxury travel from a Texas billionaire with a right-wing agenda and Nazi table linen, apparently, shows the moral depths of an unaccountable Supreme Court, lacking an ethics code and apparently for sale, that is thwarting the popular will on issues ranging from abortion to climate change. The tumultuous events of last week call to mind Vladimir Lenin's famous observation that there are decades when nothing happens, and there are weeks where decades happen. Decades indeed. Over these 7 days in April, we watched the right-wing dead-enders of the 1980s Reagan Revolution mount legislative and judicial coups against the rising youth of the 2020s in a battle waged with all the moral intensity of the 1960s. But we should also see it as a moment of clarity for a chaotic America, revealing exactly what we are fighting for and the massive stakes. Democrats are waging conventional warfare on the political front lines, at the ballot box, trying to get votes with the power of their ideas. And in much of America, they appear to be winning. It happened on Tuesday with the coalition that produced the Protasewicz landslide in Wisconsin, and with Chicago voters rejecting the reactionary cop union conservatism of Paul Vallis to elect progressive upstart Brandon Johnson, no T in that, and their new mayor. But then it's happened on the bigger stage since 1992, as Democrats have won the national popular vote in 7 of 8 presidential elections, as the United States grows more diverse and less in thrall to the conservative hierarchies around race, gender, sexuality, and intolerance. Republicans are responding with an asymmetrical civil war against democracy, constantly looking for the weak points to deploy their IEDs of autocracy, determined to blow up the American experiment if that's what it takes to retain power by any means necessary. Their tactics are working well, unfortunately. Darth Vader's Death Star had just one opening to exploit, but U.S. democracy has many. Gerrymandering, the filibuster, the Electoral College, the undemocratic makeup of the U.S. Senate, state house power plays against home rule for black or brown or progressive-minded communities, a take-no-prisoners hijacking of the judiciary. The only shock of Thursday's next-level expulsion of 2 duly elected black lawmakers in Nashville was the proof that, as Republican ideas become more unpopular, there is no bottom to how low this movement will go. And the targeting of these 2 young black activists, Representatives Justin Jones of Nashville and Justin Pearson of Memphis, should have removed any lingering doubts around what the GOP's war on democracy is ultimately all about: white power. Increasingly, state legislatures are using the pandemic-era uptick in urban crime as their shallow justification for anti-democratic assaults on the will of big city voters who believe in criminal justice reform, not the GOP's preferred method of warrior cops with roots going back to the 1800s slave patrols. In Tennessee, the white Republican majority is triggered over who can own assault rifles, the ultimate social control. The conservative movement doesn't really believe in the liberties laid out in the Declaration of Independence, the U.S. Constitution, and the Bill of Rights. It believes in the divine right of its preordained hierarchies: white supremacy, patriarchy, homophobia, xenophobia, etc., and will stop at nothing to maintain them. The story of America has been the fight for democracy against slavery, Jim Crow, pervasive sexism, mass incarceration, and more. Today, the forces of repression are running out of room, so they would rather win by fascism than lose elections. It's fitting that dramas from Nashville to Amarillo played out against the week's other huge story, the arraignment of Donald Trump in a Manhattan courtroom. Rather than depart the stage after his own election defeat in 2020, Trump has survived to become the great orange whale of American neo-fascism. The fact that the 45th president has so far managed to evade any accountability for mounting an attempted coup against the peaceful transfer of power to Biden and is running for a second term to pardon the insurrectionists of January 6th cannot be overstated here. His survival is the symbol that has emboldened the expellers, the impeachers, and the judicial dictators, the guerrilla fighters against our freely cast votes. The Nashville travesty made clear that the next 19 months between now and the 2024 presidential election, in which Trump remains the front-runner for the GOP nomination, are likely to be the most fraught time for America since 1860 and 61, and perhaps even more perilous than that prelude to our Civil War. It's not impossible to see an immediate future in which more and more democratically elected officials like Jones and Pearson are impeached or expelled, with a Supreme Court that serves an oligarchy and not the 99% of U.S. citizens continuing to not 99% of U.S. citizens, and I guess there really need to be a comma there, continuing to strip our basic freedoms, perhaps even ruling that the same state legislatures now disenfranchising black voters can also award presidential electors to the candidate with fewer votes in 2024. The citizens who cling to "it can't happen here" need to look at what is happening right now. And yet, there is also reason for great hope. Rising dramatic music, let's say. America's young people, the ones who left their classrooms last week, that's not hard to convince them to do, by the way, and overran the state capitol in Nashville to plead for real action against gun violence, the ones fighting book bans in their schools and speaking out for radical action on climate, are the bravest and boldest generation this nation has seen in some time. Their moral authority, how do you like that, guys, and their rising power at the ballot box from Eau Claire to Memphis is why a decrepit GOP is lashing out. History will surely remember what happened in Tennessee as an affront to democracy and the last throes of a dying movement. I hope that the mere fact that they've been reappointed to their seats doesn't dampen the flames for that. I hope the expulsion is what people remember, and it ought to be. Now, let's see. There were a bunch of, the last couple paragraphs reminded me of something, and I said, oh, don't forget. And, now I've forgotten, of course, exactly what it was, but if I scroll back, it may be, it reminds me of what it is that I wanted to read next, and I'm not sure, but I think it's all in pocket, so I can jump in there. There was certainly, oh yes, right, speaking to the growing unpopularity of the Republican ideas, I thought I might discuss this one tomorrow with Greg, but since Greg won't be here, I'll take a guess that he would probably have added this, although I think he really covered it well, even before Axios ran this story by Zachary Basu. Is that right? B-A-S-U? And this from this morning, the GOP's runaway train on abortion. This point, I think, made pretty clearly from other sources yesterday when Greg was with us. Top Republicans are in a state of paralysis over abortion, watching with one eye on the 2024 ballot box as a cascade of new restrictions threaten to dig the party into a political hole. This, by the way, this whole thing is a Republicans in Disarray article, but because it's not alliterative, they don't know how to say it. They love the Dems in Disarray thing because it's alliterative. There needs to be a Republican equivalent that's just as catchy because they're saying the same thing, but they can't say it in a catchy, sing-songy way that everybody walks around with on their lips. Now, why it matters? Well, of course, you know why. The Supreme Court's reversal of Roe v. Wade last summer was a huge victory for the GOP, in a way, but the backlash to new abortion restrictions has been furious and could box Republicans into defending rigid, unpopular policies in next year's elections, which is a bad place to be. I mean, that's why it matters. I don't know why they don't state it. If they're going to break it down that simplistically, they should just state it correctly. Anyway, bullet points here. That backlash already helped drive Democrats' overperformance in the 2022 midterms and their landslide victory in last week's Wisconsin Supreme Court race, a campaign that focused squarely on abortion rights. And as conservative judges have begun to further limit reproductive rights, Democrats are on the attack, and many Republican leaders have gone quiet. People noting widely yesterday the surprising silence of elected Republicans in the face of Kaczmarek's ruling. It should have been them crowing with delight, but instead they realize, oh, this actually will make it extremely difficult for some of us to get reelected and very difficult for us to hold on to majorities where they are narrow. Now, driving the news, they say, 3 days after a federal judge in Texas suspended the FDA's approval of the abortion pill that no one can pronounce, just one Republican senator, Cindy Hyde-Smith of Mississippi, has publicly expressed support for the explosive ruling. Former Vice President Mike Pence was the sole potential 2024 presidential candidate to issue a statement praising the ruling, calling the FDA's approval of the drug a 20-year wrong. Former President Trump, who has long viewed abortion as a political loser for Republicans, was silent, as was his chief GOP rival, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. The other side, Democrats, of course, seized on the ruling to paint Republicans as extremists on abortion, which they are, a tactic that has paid enormous dividends during the past year, because everyone can understand the truth of it, I would say. Representative Pat Ryan of New York introduced legislation on Monday that would reassert the FDA's authority to approve medications. He invited all members, including the House's 19 Biden district Republicans, to co-sponsor the bill. Well, you invite everybody. It's whatever. Every single Republican in office is going to have to take a position on what just happened. There's nowhere to hide. Former Planned Parenthood CEO Cecile Richards, who now co-chairs a Democratic super PAC, told the 19th, which I guess is, an Axios thing. I don't know, the 19th. Or is the 19th Amendment? Is that what they're talking about? And is that an organization that she was speaking to? There's a link. The 19thnews.org. Okay. I'm just sort of curious as to what that might be. Independent, here's their report on what they are. An independent nonprofit newsroom reporting on gender, politics, and policy. So I think that they're taking 19th from, there we are. Which 19th? It says asterisk, the amendment. That's the one that they mean. All right. So not that difficult to figure out after all. So that means it's a good name. All right. Let's see. Where were we with this? The intrigue. Now, those little section headers that Axios likes to use. Let's see. Representative Nancy Mace, the Republican of South Carolina, called for the FDA to ignore the ruling, telling CNN that abortion is an issue that Republicans have largely been on the wrong side of. Didn't we just find out yesterday that it was AOC had called for the government to ignore the ruling as well, but that put her apparently in conflict with Biden, or at least the Biden administration, the official position of which was that they would appeal the ruling. I mean, but that's what you do if you're a rule of law kind of person. But that's interesting. So I don't know. That will not be super convincing to skeptics of AOC's tactics. If you're already a skeptic and you say, well, but Nancy Mace also said that they should simply ignore it. So, I mean, there's bipartisan cover for ignoring it. At least there's that. But then the pushback, of course, would be, maybe you shouldn't be taking political advice from Democrats whose advice is echoed from Republicans who very rarely give Democrats good political advice that they actually intend for them to follow and think that it will be helpful. So, but I can see two people on different sides of the issue arriving at a similar conclusion for different reasons too. It's a thought. And like I said yesterday, it doesn't really make any sense to complain that much about, well, you're out of sync with the Biden administration. Well, when push comes to shove, she's pretty good at getting on board when, the writing's on the wall and one outcome is going to be the clear winner. I have to say AOC has been a pretty good, solid, reliable Democratic vote, not frequently holding out in, useless gestures. Sometimes those useless gestures, need to be made, and she does in fact occasionally participate in them. But I don't know. I think she's walked the line pretty well in all of this, and I don't know. Maybe there's something to it. As I said, she can claim, well, this is an opportunity for Democrats to now say they have bipartisan cover for ignoring the ruling. Maybe that's worth something. Up here, before we end from this section here in Axios, between the lines. Let's see what's between the lines. Polls since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade have consistently shown that the majority of Americans believe abortion should be legal in all or most cases. On access to abortion medication, the debate is even more lopsided. 72% of Americans oppose laws that would make it illegal to obtain abortion pills, according to a poll by PRRI. We should wait until Talk Like a Pirate Day to do their polling. But the Public Religion Research Institution, we hear about PRRI polls all the time when Greg is on with us. Let's find out what's Axios watching, in case you want to know. The GOP's political headaches over abortion are not going away, especially with prolonged media coverage of the abortion pill legal fight and a wave of unpopular new abortion restrictions coming at the state level. In Florida, DeSantis is soon expected to sign a bill changing the state's abortion ban from 15 weeks of pregnancy to 6 weeks. That, of course, being before some women, many women I would guess, know they're pregnant. The move is partly intended to bolster his support with the GOP's conservative base, but it could backfire if DeSantis winds up being the Republican nominee and has to attract moderate voters in a general election. The bottom line, they say, which is right down here at the bottom, as much as Republicans celebrated the Supreme Court's overturning of Roe as the culmination of decades of conservative activism, the dog has caught the car. They could be paying the price at the ballot box for years to come. And, of course, that's excellent news. They should be paying the price. And, I don't know. It's kind of sad that we always have to let it get to this stage before people wake up and start showing up in numbers. But, at least it's happening. I mean, we could be, staying home and crying and losing even more. All right. Let's see. I found the Philip Bump comments on Mastodon to jump back to the Bud Light thing if we really want to continue on that. But he also had a couple of other very interesting things to say. But scrolling back just a little bit here, he's got a streak of interesting observations here that probably deserve some discussion, even though a lot of people are also, seriously pissed at him at some other conclusion / headline that he had drawn. But the first of the Bud Light entries here, I guess he's written an article about it. And, okay, here we are. What the Bud Light backlash has in common with today's Republican Party. But first, what the hell Bud Light backlash is there? I guess we could just read the article, but his observation in toot form here is, in part, the Bud Light kerfuffle, we'll figure it out, is about an outrage attention machinery, using it as a pivot to advertise themselves. In part, though, it's a mirror of a central problem for the GOP, the need to expand its appeal. He then later comments on this. What Bud Light wants to do is move away from reliance on older white consumers to preserve its market share. No wonder this is so frustrating to a GOP that has refused to make the same effort. That's exactly what they need to do, and now they're watching old stalwart Bud Light, I guess, old stalwart, pull the maneuver that they refuse to pull themselves and leave them isolated and out there and looking old, outdated, and like a bunch of losers. Even Bud Light is getting on board for inclusiveness. Let's see what's going on here. What the Bud Light backlash has in common with today's Republican Party. Philip Bump writing this just yesterday, and illustrated by Pride-themed Bud Light beer koozies in 2019 on display here. But of course, that was back when Republicans were willing to have their picture taken with drag queens so long as they were MAGA drag queens. And we know a lot has changed. The marketing plan was obviously courting controversy from the outset. He begins, Bud Light, the most popular beer in the country, surprisingly enough, was going to put together a campaign centered on a group that makes up less than 9% of the population of the United States? ? Okay, we changed the tenor of that. The beer brand planned, that rhymes, the beer brand planned ads targeting this small subgroup, despite the political overtones of doing so, despite the risk of associating the brand so closely with a lifestyle that was foreign to most Americans. But tolerance really isn't, so okay. Anyway, but, a name to pronounce. But Alyssa Heinerscheid, I think I've got Heinerscheid, oh my goodness. Bud Light's vice president of marketing celebrated the move in a statement. That's what vice presidents of marketing do. The beer brand had, quote, deepened our commitment to the state of Texas with our Brewed in Texas campaign, she said in 2022. Okay. Pointing to ads featuring a bull rider and a star player on Mexico's national soccer team. This play for a specific niche, what do people say these days, wasn't going to compel any white-collar metropolitanites to grab a bottle of the beer, but maybe it would get more Hispanic Texans to do so, enough to potentially make the push worthwhile. After all, and I mean, I don't know whether there's a whole lot of Bud Light selecting going on, based on who's featured in the commercial, but enough at the margins, I'm sure that it would work. I guess my real question is, while it might help to show somebody and be inclusive of somebody, and people will say, I appreciate that, has it ever, besides among Republicans who are too sensitive to everything, have you ever seen an advertisement and saying, that person isn't me, I shouldn't drink that beer, even though I usually do all the time? I don't know if it really works that way. Anyway, after all, Bud Light's position in the market had been sliding for years, like Republicans. It remains the best-selling beer in the United States, but its market share has slipped downward over the past decade. If you can craft a marketing pitch to a lot of smaller subsets of the population, maybe you can reverse the direction of those lines. Actually, not too dissimilar to what Republicans actually tried to do with Cambridge Analytica and Facebook. They just tried to hide the fact that they were doing it from all the other groups, which is, that's one way of approaching things, I guess. It doesn't work in TV advertising the same way. Anyway, after all, Bud Light is a brand that serves as a vehicle for its parent company, AB InBev, to make money. Wow, that's a novel thought. So in recent years, it expanded its already robust marketing approach and its product line, adding seltzers and flavor blends, among other things. Speaking on a podcast this month, Heinerscheid offered an overview of the mandate she'd been given when she started her position. The brand is in decline. It's been in decline for a really long time. And if we do not attract young drinkers, and that's a dangerous phrase, to come and drink this brand, there will be no future for Bud Light, she explained. The brand has been identified as being fratty, with a kind of out-of-touch humor, she added, so her goal was to evolve and elevate it. What does evolve and elevate mean? It means inclusivity. It means shifting the tone, she said. It means having a campaign that's truly inclusive and feels lighter and brighter and different and appeals to women and to men. A few days later, one facet of that shift became apparent. Dylan Mulvaney, a trans woman, posted a short video on her Instagram page touting the beer. And that's really something. I hope you got paid for that all right. Anyway, the play from the beer's perspective is pretty obvious. Mulvaney has 1.8 million followers on the social media platform, many of whom have been presented with a Bud Light ad for the first time. The spot isn't about being trans in the way that Bud Light's Texas ads were about being Texan. But even if it had been, some 2% of the country identifies as transgender or non-binary, the Pew Research Center found last year. And to Heinerscheid's point about young drinkers, about 5% of Americans under the age of 30 identify that way. So, not a bad play, right? You may know what happened next. I don't. When Bud Light advertised in magazines targeting gay Americans in the late 1990s, it took religious leader Jerry Falwell to elevate it for criticism to a national audience. Now, though, the Mulvaney ad could be shared widely over the internet by both supporters and critics. And it was, with a number of those critics casting the ad as a somehow unacceptable departure for the brand. All right, so I guess does this lead eventually to an attempted boycott? All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Roots Radio. Where were we with all of this? We were reading something fun and interesting. Oh, yes, right. Okay, Philip Bump. We actually got around to him, not Will Bunch. But yes, we were wondering whether or not they were going to try to launch, I guess, Republicans angry about a shift in branding strategy for Bud Light, which really, what are you worried about? What will be the end result here? What are they going to do with this? We've seen similar outcry emerge with regularity over the past few years. Some brand that conservative Americans consume takes an action that is viewed as unacceptably liberal, and it briefly becomes a target of right-wing opprobrium and calls, for boycotts. They don't often have a measurable effect on the corporate targets. And what have we seen over the past couple of years? I mean, some unlikely targets, right? Boycott the NFL. How did that go? So, I mean, I would put Bud Light probably in that category. It's just not going to happen in any measurable way over long term. Yeah, and by the way, I mean, lest anyone think that, Bud Light is corporate folks in the corporate suite of Anheuser-Busch are so enlightened. I mean, eventually they'll say, well, let's swing back to the Texas thing and be, manly and cisgender heterosexual guys beer thing again this month. And then next Pride Month, we'll do a Pride Month thing too and, throw everybody a bone for a month and then go back and, we'll do one for women and we'll do a pink label. And, I don't think that there's any, hardcore convictions here. It's just, well, let's appeal to as many people as possible, so we sell as much beer as possible. Nothing magical or that inspiring even about that, but seems normal. I guess what really makes it interesting is, of course, that's capitalism for you, and I thought that was actually supposed to be a conservative value. That reminds me of something else we could get to later on, if we ever return to the subject of Florida and Ron DeSantis and his war with Disney. Anyway, let's see, they boycotted the NFL. There was a time when you were supposed to smash your Keurig. Not that I thought that there was any particular attachment among conservatives to Keurigs. I thought that was probably a weak link. That's really more conservative commentators who live in New York City, despite the fact that most of their columns are about how terrible New York City is. That sort of crowd, smash your Keurig. And most conservative Americans were like, I don't have that. I don't know what that is. Or maybe I'm wrong about that. And over, since its introduction, 200 years ago, as it turns out, the Keurig market has, greatly expanded. It's available in Costco and Sam's Clubs, and seems like an easy way to make coffee in the morning. And, it seemed sort of a little bit of hipsterism and upscale coffee available for an affordable price to the rest of America too. And so they did buy it, and then they smashed it, which seems unfortunate, really. But then, the Republican leadership has always been kind of abusive and mean to their followers. Anyway, there was that. There was, who knows what else. So let's see. There was a sneaker brand they were burning. Was it Nike? And then a sneaker brand that they were endorsing, even though the company didn't really want their endorsement, was New Balance. There was something for a while that people, alt-right types, were saying, this will be the white sneaker. And it was terrible because I have plenty of pairs of New Balance sneakers, and I thought they were always a good product, and that was disturbing for a while, that you might be weirdly identified. Now, like driving your Tesla around. You bought it because you were interested in the electric car technology, actually maybe concerned about environmental and climate change. So you bought the thing, and then it turned out that the guy most closely associated with the brand was a jerk-ass jerk. And now you end up looking like you support him. I have seen people who actually do, who I guess bought their Teslas because of Elon Musk and are Elon Musk fans, since have put stickers on their car to indicate, yeah, I bought this car, but F the environment. I hate it. And let's kill people who are weird and different, even though this car used to be a symbol for the actual opposite. I want you to know that I bought it because I support Elon Musk and his backwards idiocy. And now there are stickers that let you do that. Although the stickers always existed. They just didn't bother putting them. Anyway, you get the idea. It's a weird dynamic in the market. So, okay, that happened in the past, and often these boycotts didn't have any measurable effect because the people calling for them have no measurable effect. Instead, the outbursts stem mostly from the right's robust outrage pipelines, decrying things as woke or otherwise hostile to conservative values and habits is a surefire way of getting attention. And sure enough, Fox News and the New York Post and the Daily Mail and the other usual participants in the process have spun up their machinery to document the anti-Bud Light backlash. And that's why I haven't heard very much about it, because I don't spend a lot of time in those little ecosystems. The Mulvaney Bud Light video essentially served as a jumping off point for a different advertising campaign, one in which conservatives used Bud Light as a foil for their own demonstrations of their right-wing bona fides. Politicians like Representative Dan Crenshaw, the porno hitman, offered social media posts calling for people to boycott Bud Light. Now, why is that? Again, it's because a trans person drank some in an Instagram video. Now, that's their problem, quite honestly. Not, the conservatives, but for a trans person to drink Bud Light, whether for money or otherwise, that's a risk you assume as a beer consumer. And I guess Apparently it's no risk to your authenticity and your 1.8 million followers to say, boy, Bud Light. It's so great and tastes even better because I'm trans. I mean, there's no obvious reference. I don't know what the connection is supposed to be. Although I was thinking earlier when we were saying, they're appealing to you have to appeal to young consumers, young drinkers, which I think is a very dangerous term. Otherwise, your brand dies off. The other route, by the way, is to let it die off a little bit or a lot even, and then pretend it's retro and therefore hip to drink Bud Light. This is sort of the Pabst Blue Ribbon path back to prominence, but it's not nearly as lucrative as just staying the most popular beer in America. Anyway, Dan Crenshaw said everybody should be angry, boycott Bud Light, although in Crenshaw's case, he replaced it with another AB InBev brand. So that's kind of funny. Yeah. So what did he do? I mean, I guess he didn't really that's capitalism. They just don't understand capitalism. What do we have here? We got to get it's in the Houston Chronicle. So that's a subscription thing and I can't read it. But if I look really quick, I guess he told everybody to boycott Bud Light, but instead drink Carbach. Is that what it says? I don't know. And apparently I never heard of it, but apparently it's owned, of course, by Anheuser-Busch InBev. And so great boycott. Throw them the same money for a different reason. Musicians popular with the conservative audiences, I guess, spoke out against the brand. Kid Rock used an AR-15 style rifle to pepper several cases of beer with bullets, which really just means other people are going to go out and buy Bud Light to then machine gun it like the Keurig. Sometimes people went out and bought a Keurig and smashed it. And that's not an effective boycott tactic either. Grandpa's feeling a little frisky today, the 53-year-old musician said shortly before he pulled the trigger, which is kind of the point. The beer brand wants to expand its appeal to younger drinkers and women, seeing its market share slip as it is associated with older men like Kid Rock. There's an obvious parallel here. Now to get serious, the Republican Party itself is in a similar position as Bud Light, appealing mostly to older white voters. It has occasionally talked about trying to expand its appeal, including after the 2022 election and the 2012 election. But efforts to do so are anathema to its core base of support. Like the Republican Party's approach to young voters, the right-wing anger at Bud Light at times misunderstands the problem that is being addressed. The New York Post, for example, suggested that brands like Bud Light are pressured into reaching out to spokespeople like Mulvaney because they're terrified of falling short on a third-party measure of their inclusivity. At stake is their Corporate Equality Index, or CEI score, and that has 3 initials, and so therefore it's dangerous and scary. One of them is C. Anyway, so that's what they think this is about. Their Corporate Equality Index, which is overseen by the Human Rights Campaign, the largest LGBTQ plus political lobbying group in the world. The papers, which paper? New York Post. Dana Kennedy wrote on Friday. She went on to note that HRC had, quote, received millions from George Soros. Right. In fact, George Soros's Open Society Foundation. This is a bizarre argument, but a familiar one. It is somehow incomprehensible that Bud Light should actively be interested in courting a younger population that is sincerely more open to LGBTQ Americans. Those under age 30 are 16 percentage points more likely to say the country hasn't gone far enough to welcome those who are transgender than they are to say we've gone too far, according to Pew. Those age 65 and up are 12 points more likely to say we've gone too far. But since much of the outcry is coming from those who view transgender Americans with hostility, the Mulvaney spot is framed as being inexplicable outside of the context of some all-powerful report card offered by a nonprofit organization. It's the same response we see from people like Elon Musk to the fact that younger people are now more likely to vote Democratic. It must be because they are somehow indoctrinated. It can't be. that they simply have different values or beliefs than those on the right. That so many on the right exist within an impermeable bubble of rhetorical agreement certainly reinforces this tendency. It remains to be seen how the Mulvaney spot will affect Bud Light's bottom line. Perhaps the brand will see a brief dip in sales as conservatives reject it. Perhaps that will be made up for by younger people and allies of the transgender community deciding to pick up a six-pack. Maybe, as Heinerscheid hopes, that effect will linger and the brand will come to be seen not as fratty, but as one that has evolved to reflect the views of the younger beer-buying population. Boy, in my day, Bud Light was too expensive to be fratty, actually. Interesting. I don't know whether that's changed relatively, speaking of the price of Bud Light versus other things. But, like getting an actual Budweiser branded beer keg at the fraternities in my day would have been like, that was like a big deal. Oh my God, they've got Bud on tap tonight. They're really laying out some cash. There are cut rate beers that, market well below that were important in our day. Anyway, what Bud Light is trying to do is not much different from what the Republican Party wants to do: bring in new allies. And in each case, the same group, older conservative men, is the one pushing back against the idea. The question for Bud Light, then, is whether its base of support is less heavily dependent on that group than is the GOP. Or whether it can simply dice up the beer market in enough ways and with enough targeted ads to reverse its downward skid in the aggregate. Perhaps it's time for a campaign targeting California instead. Maybe. Or maybe it's time to hire Cambridge Analytica to do your beer advertising. That's also a possibility. All right. So, yeah, it has a really good political angle, as it turns out. As dumb as the story is in terms of it being about Bud Light and people being outraged about things, it's true. These are important questions after all. All right. Let's see. There's another bridge to another angle on really kind of the same story. Let me see if, and no wonder it's all connected, as this one too is from Philip Bump, and I'm pretty sure I saw him tooting about this one on Mastodon as well, and if I can grab it. Yeah. So, this one helps us transition a little bit maybe to Florida, though I don't know that we're going to have time to get to to any stories about Florida. But just a reminder of this weird fight that's going on between DeSantis and Disney over the idea that Disney also is too woke, which is the code among Republicans for doing things like this Bud Light play, to be inclusive and market to, the next generation of people who are going to have money to spend, who have a little bit now and are going to be the future of these brands, and saying, yeah, we actually believe in the power of market-driven capitalism like you guys told us we were supposed to. But as it turns out, Republicans have have zero values that they, stick with consistently. It's all gimmitarianism. And even the supposed core value of free market capitalism is easily jettisoned if you think, fascism might work better for us, or whatever it is. Or for that matter, if they thought communism would work better for them, I believe they'd become communists at the drop of a hat too. Anyway, here's the Bridge article here, and the Bridge thought that Philip Bump is expressing. He's speaking to, he's got a couple of articles here, by the way. One about what he begins with a comment: the ongoing CRT panic, Trump claiming that black prosecutors are racist, the expulsion of the 2 black but not the 1 white Tennessee legislator, the pardoning of the killer of the BLM protester in Texas. New manifestations, he said, but the same old racial resentments, in which he's got an article attached here. A spate of recent news stories makes it obvious how black-white tensions remain central to American politics. True, but not the article I intend to read. There's a third in which which is titled here, Republican Efforts to be the Party of Parents Suffers a Setback. Interesting, right? So this is the play. Everybody figured they would just duplicate the Glenn Youngkin effort. And, of course, they couldn't help but try to one-up the Glenn Youngkin effort, who, Glenn Youngkin won on the strength, supposedly, on the strength of his appeal to letting parents have more say, or all the say, in how their kids are educated in public schools. In order to one-up that, Ron DeSantis has to, put it on steroids, and now he's generated this backlash. And Bump is tweeting his article around with, what was the comment that caught my eye? The GOP wants to leverage fears of what students are being taught to win over parents. That is to say, I think I could reemphasize it. The GOP wants to leverage fears of what students are being taught to win over parents, because they want the parents to believe that they're being taught something awful or being given litter boxes, what have you. But since May, parents' concerns about education have waned, while concern about GOP response has surged. What's he talking about here? Let's see. Where's the piece I need to read? Okay, well, it sort of disappeared from my screen here, but I'll find it again. There we are. Republican efforts to be the party of parents suffers a setback. Even when students are in the classroom, they're being bombarded with woke propaganda and racial gender ideology, a concerned parent wrote in August as American children began to head back to school last time around. That was because of Democrats and the White House, she argued, while Republicans are championing parental rights and educational opportunity for every student. It was Republicans who had, quote, fought against critical race theory and leftist efforts to replace parents with the state, she insisted. She would. The author was Ronna McDaniel, chair of the National Republican Party, in case you were wondering who this lunatic was. The unsubtle essay appeared in the conservative Washington Examiner. In other words, a compartmentalized publication meant to be seen by only like-minded individuals, a little bit like their Cambridge Analytica strategy. And then when Democrats or when corporations try it to make inroads among Democrats, that's an outrage. Anyway, as with any such essay, McDaniel was being aspirational. She wanted American parents to view her party as their natural ally, especially with the midterm elections looming. It didn't work, by the way. Exit polls show that Republicans did slightly better than Democrats in November, with voters who had kids under the age of 18, though the party underperformed relative to expectations. New polling from Fox News, meanwhile, shows that the party's efforts to bolster its purported advocacy for parents is stumbling. The Fox News poll, conducted by well-regarded bipartisan polling firms, asked respondents, in case you were wondering, oh, well, Fox News, they don't know what they're doing. We're reminded their polling operation is a pretty good one. Well, they asked respondents the extent to which they were concerned about various issues. It does this fairly regularly. A number of the questions in the most recent poll were also asked in a poll conducted in May of last year. They included a question about the extent of concerns Americans had about book banning by local school boards. In May, 2/3 of self-identified parents said they were extremely or very concerned about such bans. By March, 3/4 did. It's an interesting thing, and I don't know whether he actually gets around to discussing it explicitly. We'll see. But the observation I kind of want to make here is, again, to reiterate, what I think is really happening here is, and it's not just tactics that Glenn Youngkin came up with or had someone else come up with for him, whether that's Chris Rufo or anyone else. But it seems like Republicans, maybe in general, just can't get it's never enough just to do a little. Like to say, well, we want to respond to parents' concerns because parents are already protesting. What was going on in Loudoun County with the horrible rape case that had become public knowledge and had been, I think, poorly handled. Generally, everybody will acknowledge, even Democrats acknowledge that was not particularly well handled, to say the very least. But, producing all sorts of outrage that was played upon by Republicans looking to get, and it's kind of gross to get seek electoral advantage out of that. But okay, the backlash was real, the upset was real, and they played it pretty well. And the issue here is that the leading non-Trump contender for 2024 is the very unsubtle Ron DeSantis. And whenever he sees a Republican have some success with something, he says, I will double down on that. And then I will double down on my doubling down of that. And he does it very quickly and very aggressively because he knows no subtlety. And he's not constrained in any way because he's just kind of openly operating as a fascist and just says, I'm just going to force this thing to happen. I'm going to force my party in Florida to force this thing to double, triple, quadruple down on stuff. And he goes right past the acceptable limits for voters into territory that is easily exploitable by other Republicans, by Democrats, etc., saying, hasn't he once again gone too far? The natural limits that would ordinarily make this sort of slowly progress in this direction and keep our voters on board, the guardrails there have been destroyed by the widespread acceptance of fascist tactics instead. And I guess he thinks, let's just, you find a new drug that gets your people high and then you just spike them over and over with it. What happens is you overdose them. It's not that they just get more and more addicted. They just die quicker. That's probably the better analogy. And Ron DeSantis is, about overdosing his crowds as quickly as possible. And it's just that I guess Floridians have a high tolerance for this stuff because they're all Florida men and women, but eventually they'll die too. But in the meantime, the rest of the country is saying, you're making me ill here. You're getting me sick, or I'm dying, or whatever it is. Glenn Youngkin says we need to give parents more control over what happens in the classroom. And everybody says, yeah. And Ron DeSantis says, well, I want to give you total control. We'll ban books that you don't like. We think that if one parent complains, we should pull the books and all books like it and all books that have the same color cover off the shelf immediately. Huh? How did I do? Yeah? Isn't that what you wanted? No, that's not what we wanted. Now you've made us think about book banning, and we've always learned that was terrible. That makes us uncomfortable. But Glenn Youngkin did it, and he wears a vest. And go, why aren't you regarding me as just more Glenn Youngkin than Glenn Youngkin is? And the answer is, I don't know. He seemed to have found the sweet spot. He paid some attention to it, and I don't know whether he did it consciously or not. But this whole act of you just stealing every play that any other Republican has any success with and just doing it harder is not really working. Anyway, back to the article. We'll see whether we get around to this point, and maybe I'm all alone in this one. Importantly, the views of parents were not much different from the concerns of Democrats or Republicans in May, differing only by a few percentage points. The 19-point increase in concern among parents between May and March, though, mirrored an increase in Democratic concern. Now, parents align much more closely with Democrats on the subject, because he just, wouldn't stop and kept going just too damn far. He wasn't really paying attention to parents' concerns. And that's what it was, is that at its heart, it was never about listening to the parents. It was about exploiting parents' expressed concerns and trying to make it align with partisan interests. And I guess, the parents turned out to be pretty well attuned to their own feelings about things. And when the garbage coming out of DeSantis's mouth no longer mirrored their interests, they just said, no, not interested in that. Interesting that they're not interested. Notice the wording here, by the way. The question is about book bans, a real issue, but attributed to local school boards. This depoliticizes the issue to some extent. It's not Florida Governor Ron DeSantis pushing for schools to limit what books are available, which is what he's actually doing, out of concern over critical race theory. Instead, it's just a local school board making a call. Contrast those results with another issue: what's being taught in public schools. In May of 2022, the level of concern expressed by parents aligned with those of Republicans, differing by only 2 percentage points. By March, though, that concern had fallen 7 points. It could be the fact that, right just prior to the start of a new school year, they were worried. And then several months into the school year, they said, you know what, I'm not that worried anymore. Or maybe they found out that, again, because, there was no stopping the escalation, right? We're concerned about CRT. And then it immediately goes to, now there's litter boxes in the schools. And maybe parents did eventually say, there's no litter boxes in the schools. This is getting stupid. This guy doesn't have any idea what's happening with teachers or classrooms, and we need to stop listening to him. But as we say, as we're following the numbers here, in May, 3/4 of parents expressed concern about what was being taught in schools. Now, 3/4 worry about book bans. On a number of other issues in the Fox News poll, parents align more closely with Democrats than Republicans. Climate change, expanding gun background checks, increasing taxes on the wealthiest Americans. Not taxes, taxes. Most of those, though, aren't directly related to parenting as such, so maybe they're not paying attention. We'll be right back.
Sup fam, it's your boy Darwin, aka Darwin_Darko, aka the most reasonable man in America, aka KITM's senior black correspondent. You might remember me from such recordings as Spacemen vs. Space Cadets and We Need to Talk About Joe Biden. Today, I want to bring you good news about that thing you've been struggling with. Do you suffer from giving too much of a damn? Do you turn on the series of tubes and find yourself outraged at the particular way some news organization strung some sentences together only to realize, nope, this is not some fictional hellscape? Well, guess what? You no longer have to accept the life of giving too much of a damn. You can do something about it, because even you, yes you, can be a show contributor. Now I know what you're thinking. Hey, Mr. Most Reasonable Man in America, I'm not some professional podcast talking guy. Don't worry about it. Do you have a smartphone or some other electronic recording device? Well, that's all you need. You too can have a segment where you can read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Fair warning though, side effects may include general punditry, having opinions and hot takes, getting stuff off your chest, and hearing your own voice. If your recording lasts longer than 5 to 7 minutes, please consult kagrox@gmail.com. That's KAGROX@gmail.com.
Yep. I learned my lesson about wearing a mask.
Ah, okay. Well, welcome back, everybody, to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. And welcome back to Joan, who's, I guess, still feeling a little under the weather. But thank you for coming on and joining us. You can hear it in your voice. But we're glad to hear your voice nonetheless. And so, a lingering cold, eh?
Yeah, it's hanging in there. It doesn't want to leave.
And I guess, yeah, you were saying, well, wearing masks helps with every airborne disease, and colds are airborne disease, so.
They are indeed. I learned my lesson.
Yeah, well,
Can't have normal life.
Not just yet.
Not yet.
And not, well, this too, well, unless this is part of normal life, which it was always,
it is now.
right? Yeah. Well, COVID now will become, I guess, part of it. And even non-COVID colds, we got them all the time. And that was part of the problem of convincing a large swath of America that it was worth wearing masks. We get colds all the time. Yeah, but this one's different. No, it isn't. So it's not different, but you're eating horse paste? Really? I mean, because that's a difference. That used to be horse medication. Now it's your medication. Tell me nothing's changed. But then their heads exploded because, logic. Anyway, so let's see. Well, at least you had a little bit of vacation time beforehand, too.
Yeah.
So that's nice. Sounds like you could use another one.
I need another one where I'm healthy. Yes.
Were you? That's too bad. You were not feeling well during the vacation. On top of it all, but
Oh no, the vacation I was fine.
Oh,
Busy,
okay.
but fine. And then,
well,
yeah,
at
the
least you
last
had
2
that.
weeks have not been particularly productive or fun.
I guess not. Well, they've been productive on the writing side anyway, and you don't need a voice out loud to do that. So, and working from home probably helps.
Yes.
So,
Although I haven't even been able to do that. Anyway, enough about me. We don't care about that.
well, we sort of do, but yeah, I get your point. It's very nice. We want to move on to people, that we have to pay some attention to, and it's been a while since we had an update on what's going on, and there was a recess in the middle there, so that was well timed. But I guess they're going to come back to Washington and try to legislate, so I guess we should catch up.
Yeah, they're coming back on Monday. Well,
Okay.
Tuesday. I mean,
Yeah.
reality.
Wouldn't really be Monday, would it? Somebody comes back to read out the schedule, which means, everybody else comes back on Tuesday.
There might be some suspensions in the House Monday. I'm not sure.
Not unusual.
I don't think the Senate's doing anything, but I have to double check that. But, if they are doing anything, it's not anything final.
Okay. Well, what have we got on tap here? I'm just looking down your list of most recent diaries, and I guess in keeping with, maybe we could segue into this from the readings I was doing in the last segment or so. Right up at the top here, the most recent Good Plan GOP, or GOP as I like to say. Let's see if that catches on anywhere. Put cutting Gen Z's Social Security benefits in your 2024 platform. Cutting anybody's Social Security benefits, bad idea, but we were just reading a bunch of articles about how Republicans are confused about the whole idea of trying to appeal to younger voters and can't find any way to do it. And rather than turn around on any of the tough issues, they've managed instead to find something else to turn off younger voters with. That sounds like a good idea for us.
It is a good idea for us. I don't know what they're thinking. I mean, abortion, gun control, student loans,
Yeah.
book bans, the trans attacks, and now we'll take away your Social Security too.
It doesn't seem like a good combination.
No. And there's no support for it politically in the polls among Republican or Democratic or independent voters who all say leave Social Security alone. Mm-hmm. And, there's more support for actually increasing Social Security, lowering the retirement age from 67, which it currently is for us.
Yeah.
Than this. Even older voters don't think it should be cut for their grandchildren, children.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you could see that there's a possibility. Usually, of course, the older voters say, well, don't cut it for me. But I guess if you wanted to cut it for other people.
Well, and that's what
maybe,
Republicans have been. I mean, after Bush in 2005 decided, well, let's just kill the program off and privatize it. And that was his famous, I've got political capital and I'm going to use it. Mm-hmm. After his reelection.
Yeah.
It didn't work.
No.
So after that, Republicans decided that they had better stop trying to just completely destroy the program and started looking at things like, well, okay, we'll start cutting benefits for people who are younger than 55. That was what Romney and Ryan were talking about, that, nobody who's currently on Social Security or who's about to be on Social Security and is likely to vote Republican is going to have to worry about having their benefits cut. Mm-hmm. But everybody after them. That didn't go over so well, so now they decided, okay, we've got to keep all of the people who we think will vote for us happy, and we'll pick on the kids. Everybody likes to pick on the kids, right? Talk about the millennials and the Gen Z and those damn kids.
I guess they figured, Well, traditionally they vote in lower numbers, but of course, I guess it might have occurred to them that maybe they vote in lower numbers because we're rarely attacking them. And if we do, that might change, but you have to find out. Now they've found out, and they still won't stop. So, I don't know. It seems kind of an odd solution, but a lot of the last segment was about, and maybe it's presidential campaign dynamics that is driving it, or maybe it's just the fact that Ron DeSantis is involved in those campaign dynamics, and he has no really developed political sense of any sort. He just sort of rocketed to prominence and learned no lessons about going too far at any point because he just rode this MAGA wave. So he just thinks extremism in everything is the answer. Someone has found something that worked in another state with Republicans. I'll do it 10 times harder in Florida, and I guess I'll just get 10 times the results. And that's not really the way things work.
No, it's not. And in fact, it's driving, again, young people away from Florida.
Remarkable.
Remarkable.
Yeah, I'm also kind of puzzled by his continuing war with Disney, and I guess he now feels like he has to one-up them in everything that they do. There was that really interesting play at the end of the end of the old Reedy Creek board that was governing the Orlando area that the physical plant of the Disney parks is in, and he figured on taking that over and using it to punish them, and they made a change at the last minute that made it extremely hard for him to do legally what he wanted to do. And so now he's back at war with them and talking about like installing toll booths, like charging tolls to access roads to the Disney parks and imposing additional surtaxes on Disney hotels and things like this. And I'm astonished in a way that so many Republican principles are being abandoned here. They really want to road test the whole let companies, take profits where they can construct. I didn't realize that they wanted to crack down on that, but I guess we'll let them. I'm not sure I'm that worried about, I need to take Disney's side in this. I'll maybe let this one play out. I don't know.
I don't understand. There might be resentment against Disney in Florida just because Disney is Disney and bigfooting its way into the state. But it's one of the most loved institutions in the whole country.
Yeah.
Those Disney people are kind of nuts. I mean, there's a whole army out there of people who I am convinced have gone to the park and gotten a microchip or something that makes them just
go back
a fanatic.
There are, sure.
I have a very close friend who is one of these people who goes 4 times a year.
Well, people move to
buys
Florida.
all of the Disney product, who just is obsessed.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of them. People have their weddings there.
Right, absolutely.
This is a big, big thing.
Definitely true.
And DeSantis is going to be making a lot of enemies with this one, and it's going to be hard.
Yeah.
Nationally.
And they'll
to translate Disney as evil to an American public. I don't think that's going to work.
That's going to be very tough. They're all over the country, of course, and not just the fanatics. I mean, the fanatics are all over the country too, but a lot of them are concentrated in Florida. People move to Florida to be more fanatical so they can get to the parks more often. I mean, it's not my thing, but there's also I don't know how old is the Disney Corporation? But how many years, decades, going on 100 years? Among the most beloved American
institutions. How many of
us
as children shaped our? This was our Sunday night.
Sure, of course.
Gathering in front of the TV and the castle and the sparkles and
and it's
the
been
wonderful world of Disney.
For years synonymous with not only harmlessness, for one thing, and to be selling it as, no, they're in fact the biggest predators of all. Nah, that's not the way most people feel. And of course, they've had some brilliant public relations and advertising campaigns. Not only is it, synonymous with harmless family entertainment, but it's the thing that your sports hero declares the first thing he's going to do to celebrate is go to Disneyland. Like, wow. I mean, all right.
I'm going to Disneyland.
Yeah.
It is just...
I just don't see it working. But then, but they haven't seen any of their things work, and it still doesn't deter them. The idea that they were going to boycott the NFL. Oh, sure. Yeah. And now they're supposed to be, now we're going to boycott Bud Light. All right. I mean, I really don't think you're going anywhere with this. And so now we're going to add Disney to all of this too. And, but on the other hand, yeah, like a giant corporation and a Republican are going to fight, everybody. Oh no. I mean, they're going to still make cartoons, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Go ahead and fight then. It's going to be a couple years till I have to go back to a Disney park with, say, grandchildren. So you guys got like 25 years to fight this out. So
I have vowed that finally, after years of working on me, I have agreed that yes, I will go to Disney with my very best friend.
All right.
Even though I think it's nuts.
Oh, that'll be an experience. You're talking about going with the fanatic.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. Well, that might be eye-opening in a number of ways, and I'm sure you'll have a good time.
I'm sure I'll have. I mean, she's got this down to a science. Where to eat. Oh yeah. The order of rides to go on.
Sure.
Everything. She's yeah.
There is a science to that. There are books. I've learned this because my wife, who's not in fanatic category, I don't think. I mean, I've never had to dress up as anything. So I guess that means, but when we went to the park, well, bringing the kids, okay, books, spreadsheets were involved.
Oh my goodness.
Like this was more I think efficiency fanaticism than Disney fanaticism. But the fact is that the two systems merge very well, and you really can map things out so that, you hit the parks and get the advanced tickets and the this and the that and time your arrival at this ride or that ride. But it didn't involve dressing up as any princesses. So,
so anyway,
that's good. Yes.
Think of all of the families out there.
Yes.
Who do this. Who every year do this. This is their big vacation. And think of all the memories made and think of the children, the grandchildren, the great-grandchildren. And yeah, what is DeSantis thinking?
I don't know. I guess he thinks either that there's a win at the end or he just doesn't understand. Somebody else fought either Disney or some corporate entity over wokeness. And I'm going to take it 10 times past the extreme. And he doesn't really get it that there are limits to it. Reading about, Youngkin wins on, we're going to have more parental control over what's taught in the classroom. Oh yeah, well, I'll allow you to pull books on one person's complaint. Isn't that better? No, it's worse, says the voters that he's trying to capture, but he doesn't hear it. I guess he has people who tell him, no, it's working awesome. Everybody loves book bans. You're doing great. And I guess he just thinks that the most extreme version of extremism is that has to be better. Somebody else won by saying parents control. Well, I'll let parents literally control everything. Oh, well.
It's very strange.
Yeah.
It's very strange.
And the interesting, one of the other interesting angles on it is something that you've been covering lately too is, what this is, of course, between this and fights between murdery Trader Green and loony Laura Loomer, and now a categorization of the different factions of the House Republican Conference as, hilariously enough, the five families. Have you heard that terminology?
Yes. Do they not know what happened to the five families in the movie?
I guess not.
But, I mean, remember when they were the Young Guns?
Yeah.
What happened to most of the young guns in that movie wasn't so great either.
That's true too. And then it happened to these young guns. Except, well, one of them made it to the ultimate goal, and he's not getting to enjoy it because he's not actually in control. But yeah, that didn't work out for them. Well, I don't know why they base everything on movies, but
well, let's go back to his not being in control.
Okay, yes,
and
that's
his choices. Well, he's not in control. Apparently, he's forgotten that.
Make good choices.
Because he's going around in his caucus trash talking against his fellow leadership people. I mean, he says Steve Scalise is unreliable. He's ineffective, checked out, and reluctant to take a position on anything.
Well, that's because he's looking to
he
stab
says
you in the
his
back.
budget chair, Jody Arrington, is incompetent and won't be able to do a budget. I mean,
wow,
pot kettle. But
yeah, but
he's
wow,
going around
that's
telling other Republicans this.
Maybe I don't know. He's just never. He didn't know what it took to be an effective leader in the first place. But part of that transition to having won the prize is, yeah, you now have to kind of leave yourself open to being stabbed in the back, and you have to let them. It's part of the job, is to be stabbed once in a while and to absorb it on behalf of your conference, as they call it. But he's never really learned that. And of course, he's seen speaker after speaker from the Republican side and leader after leader be stabbed in the back and succumb to those wounds too. So now I guess that's interesting as leader to be actively battling, actively fighting in the press with your own leadership. It's understood that they have factions and that they one day want to take over. That's the process.
Well, that this was leaked to the press. He didn't run to the New York Times to say all of these things.
Okay, well that's
didn't deny him when the New York Times asked necessarily, not heartily denied them. So it is, reports but they've not been walked back.
Yeah. Well, he's not equipped to work in the age of the audio recording or the secret audio recording or the leaks. Yeah, well, we need to find an alliterative and fun way for writers to talk about it. They never gave up on Dems and disarray because it was just too easy to say. We just don't have anything for Republicans, but that's exactly what's happening.
Disarray just doesn't really work. Republicans there just isn't.
Retrenchment, there's nothing good so far that we've hit on, but well, maybe someone else
not
will.
a pithy way to say it.
But all we have is
there they are
splintering
in fighting. So they're already talking. I think motion to vacate among themselves. If they're hinting to Axios that he's not going to last if he keeps this up, then yes, they are talking about the motion to vacate within their ranks.
And they can blame it on
this could be. Scalise has insisted he didn't want it. He didn't want to be speaker. But does Scalise really not want to be speaker?
Hard to tell.
Is this he was lukewarm toward McCarthy for a long time.
And now, it's within reach. Like, he could have it if they depose him. He's a leading candidate. So
I would think so, and I think he could probably be the consolidator. I don't think it would take 15 votes. I don't know.
Hard to say,
it's going to be wild.
Yeah. And,
meanwhile, we do still have a debt ceiling that we're coming up against.
And no clear indication where that's going, and not even a set of demands, like exactly what do we want in exchange for the hostage.
No.
And that's where I learned about the five family
another
thing.
Point of contention. This is sort of where the whole thing started in the media with McCarthy having a problem with his team.
Yeah.
When Jody Arrington came out and said, okay, here's my list of things that we want for our budget, things that we're going to demand in negotiations with Biden. And McCarthy essentially said, I don't know anything about that.
But again...
So no, they don't know what they're doing. We don't yet have even a discharge petition active in the House. Which seems like it would have been a thing to do, just to be on the safe side. It would have been the thing to do weeks and weeks ago, I would have thought, to be on the safe side, since it takes 3 to 4 months to actually pull the trigger on a discharge petition. I think realistically it could not happen now in time.
Yeah, well, I'm curious about the decision there. Maybe they're just like, well, we really have to force the Republicans to do this themselves. But there's so much
there's
at
value
stake
to that. But just quietly doing the discharge petition, getting it to committee, getting it ready, and waiting just in case.
Yeah, it's always wise to have it just in case.
I would have chosen that over the let's keep the pressure on them thing. I still think that really the only option, because I don't see how McCarthy's going to get anything on this done in the House, is going to have to be Biden saying, okay, I'll do it on my own, damn the torpedoes, and sue me if you want to.
Well, that's, the ground has been softened for that approach. I mean, we spent 4 years, suing during the Trump administration for his just doing things. Maybe one time for a Democratic administration to say, you saw me try to not do it this way, and now they've held the economy hostage, and they can't even tell me what they want in exchange. Not that I should listen to them anyway, but I mean, there's literally no demand. I don't know what else to do.
Just come up with a budget, and they can't even do that. Which is Biden's fault, by the way, that they don't have one yet, because it took him so long to release his. Their view of it. I mean, you knew you guys had to write the budget, actually right? Said we were going to have one, but then it took Biden so long to do his, we couldn't.
They never.
Which makes absolutely no sense. But
they've never. And the Congress, Democratic Congresses, Republican Congresses, for about 50 plus years now. I guess the length of the existence of the Budget Act, I would guess, have made an annual thing of insisting that the president's budget means nothing to them.
Yeah.
I mean, with the exception of occasionally the things that we haven't decided what to do, we'll say, all right, well, what's the president's request? All right, we'll do that. But the annual exercise is to say the president's budget, that's dead on arrival. That's the actual wording. They always say that, and they always ignore it, and it doesn't matter that it would be late. But okay. But this is because they don't have any thoughts, and I don't know. It did occur to me the other day as I was thinking back to Occupy Wall Street days, when it was fashionable among all the writers to say that if you don't have a list of demands, you're not a political player. You're just not to be taken seriously.
Right.
So, okay, we're not gonna raise the debt ceiling unless you blank. What is it? What's the thing? Couldn't tell you. Don't know. 5, 10, 15 different competing ideas, all of which are crazy and none of which solve any of the problems you say you're concerned about. But I don't know. So which one is it going to be? Who gets to speak? Ordinarily, you'd say the speaker gets to speak. But no, not this one. Okay. So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's the only way it comes out, right? Since you've not named anything, I guess I, as president, will just choose what we're going to do. And if the question is, what thing do I want to give up? Since none of you can force me to give up anything in particular because you can't unite behind it, what if I give up nothing and you give up everything? I assume you'll oppose that, but, go ahead and organize yourselves.
I've got a thing going, sorry.
I'm sorry?
There. I'm sorry.
You're back. Okay. Okay. Well,
a video just opened up on my. I'm sorry.
Well, okay. I didn't see anything, so everything's fine. But a video opened up on your screen.
Did you hear it?
No. So it didn't even distract everybody. So
good.
That's nice. You had it all set correctly. Okay. Well, I don't know. So let's see. Rolling forward, what's on the plate for today? There's still not much happening.
There's still not much happening. Everything happened last week while I was sick.
Yeah, I know.
I'm sure that we'll find news. I am sure we'll find news.
You're still sick, so there'll still be news. I mean, if there's any relationship between the two of them. But, I hope you can kick this sometime soon.
I'm going to do my best.
Yes. And I hope this wasn't too uncomfortable to try to speak all the way through.
I have my tea. It's helping.
Okay. That's good news. All right. Well, yeah, maybe we'll, it's almost time for us to wrap up anyway, but anything else you want to sneak in preview-wise or?
I haven't a preview for you. I'm sorry. I'm still kind of catching up, but
understandable.
Next week we will have lots to talk about, I'm sure.
I'm sure. And I appreciate your toughing it out today. I know it's been a while since we spoke, and I didn't want to guilt you or anything, but
it's been a while since I've spoken, which is part of my problem here, why I can't. And I think I'm going to go now and not speak more.
All right. Well, I'll agree to those terms. Thank you very much, Joan, for coming by today. We'll play the official outro music, so you have every reason now to feel, okay, you made it to the end. I appreciate it. Feel better soon. We'll check in with you again next Tuesday when I hope that process is done. But
me too.
Okay. Take care, and we'll speak to you again next Tuesday. And now we'll say goodbye and say that it's time for Justice Putnam to come up and fill in the blanks where we have left them wide open. There are still a couple of stories that we didn't get a chance to cover, but he's all prepared to bring you the Tuesday version, the Tarrytown Chowder Tuesday version of the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, which comes up next right here on Netroots Radio. You don't have to go anywhere to have those blanks filled in. Starting off in his Bistro Cafe, the people have spoken, and they expect abortion rights. And that's a quote from somebody. We'll find out the blind source when you stick around and hear it right from Justice's mouth. Then on the rest of the menu, the 3 Tennessee trial judges. They're not Tennessee 3 legislators, but 3 trial judges blocked the state's move to cut the Nashville City Council in half. Nashville City Council would have been responsible for returning one of our expelled lawmakers to his seat. Now, for the first time in the school's 257-year history, Rutgers faculty went on strike. Let's find out what that's about. Stay tuned. You'll hear more about it next.
From netrootsradio.com, you have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
And a major story that we have so far not covered on our air here. The major leak of classified U.S. documents that's shaken Washington may have started in a chat room on a social media platform popular with gamers. Oh dear, I bet I know which one that one's about. Stay tuned next to find out whether we're right.